They don't talk about you anymore. They don't reach out. They pretend they've moved on. But somehow, they still feel you. In quiet moments, at night, when life slows down, this isn't attachment. This isn't obsession. This is something much deeper. Because when someone can't forget you, it's not about memory. It's about connection. And some connections don't live in the mind. They live in the nervous system, in the unconscious, in the soul. Stay with me. Because once you understand why they can't forget you, you'll realize it was never about trying to be remembered. Most people think forgetting someone is about time, but psychology tells a different story. We don't forget people who changed us. We don't forget people who touched parts of us we didn't even know existed, especially when that connection felt safe, deep, or real. When you connected with them beyond surface-level interaction, their mind didn't just register you as a person, it registered you as an experience. And experiences don't disappear just because contact ends. Your presence activated something inside them, a version of themselves that felt seen, understood, emotionally alive. That's why they remember you in moments of stillness. Because silence is where unresolved emotional bonds speak the loudest. The psychology behind why you stay in their mind. Psychologically, the brain doesn't release emotional connections easily, especially when emotions were intense but unfinished, closure was missing, vulnerability was real, or growth happened through pain. Your energy became familiar to their nervous system. They learned how it felt to be around you. So, even when you're gone physically, their body remembers you emotionally. This is why they feel a strange pull toward you, without understanding why. Their conscious mind may say, "It's over," but their unconscious says, "Something is unresolved." And unresolved emotional connections linger. Spiritual connection where logic fails. Now here's where psychology meets something deeper. Spiritual connection doesn't rely on communication. It's not about texting, calling, seeing each other. It's about resonance. You resonated with a part of them that was dormant before you arrived. That's why they feel you when they're emotional, they're growing, they're breaking old patterns, or they're becoming someone new. Your energy is tied to their transformation, and transformation leaves imprints. This is why they can't forget you, because forgetting you would mean forgetting who they became around you. Why distance makes it stronger. Distance doesn't weaken spiritual bonds. It exposes them. When distractions fade, the truth surfaces. And the truth is, they didn't just lose a person, they lost a feeling, a sense of being understood without explaining, a calm they didn't know they needed, a mirror that showed them themselves honestly. That's hard to replace. That's why they compare everyone else to you, even if they don't admit it. The unconscious remembers what the mind tries to forget. They may distract themselves, stay busy, move forward. But the unconscious doesn't respond to distraction. It responds to emotional truth. And the truth is, you mattered in a way that went deeper than routine. That's why certain songs remind them of you. Certain places feel heavy. Certain moments feel incomplete. Not because they want you back necessarily, but because your presence changed something internally. And that change doesn't reverse. Why they feel you at random moments. Have you ever noticed how they feel you when they least expect it? That's because emotional memory is non-linear. It doesn't follow time. It follows resonance. You surface when they're emotionally vulnerable. They're alone with their thoughts. They're facing the same patterns you once helped them see. Your energy became associated with awareness. And awareness doesn't disappear. This is why they don't reach out. Here's something important. Not forgetting you doesn't always mean they will come back. Sometimes they don't reach out because they know reconnecting would reopen a door they aren't ready to walk through. So instead, they carry you quietly, in thought, in feeling, in memory. And that's often heavier than reaching out. What this means for you, you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to remind them you exist. If someone can't forget you, it's because your connection lives beyond effort. And the strongest connections don't require chasing. They simply remain. Most people confuse emotional attachment with spiritual connection. Attachment is created by habit. Connection is created by recognition. Attachment fades when routine breaks. Spiritual connection stays because it touched identity. You didn't just become part of their life, you became part of how they felt about themselves. That's why they don't just miss you. They miss who they were when they were with you. And that's much harder to let go of. Why your absence triggers their awareness. When you were present, you carried emotional clarity. You didn't need to explain everything. You felt understood. When you left, that clarity left with you. And now, they feel it. Not immediately, but gradually. In moments when they feel misunderstood by others. Conversations feel empty. Connections feel shallow. That contrast makes your absence loud. Not because you're gone, but because nothing replaced what you gave. The unfinished emotional loop. Psychology explains this through something called an open emotional loop. When something meaningful ends without closure, the mind keeps revisiting it. Not to suffer, but to understand. Your connection ended without full emotional resolution. So their mind keeps returning to you, replaying moments, rewriting conversations, imagining different outcomes, not because they're weak, but because the story never truly finished. Why they feel you when you start moving on. Here's something very important. The moment you start letting go, they feel you more. Why? Because emotional energy shifts. You stop feeding the connection unconsciously. You reclaim your focus. And when that happens, they feel the absence more clearly. It's like turning off a signal they didn't know they were receiving. Suddenly, they feel the loss. That's when they think of you unexpectedly, feel nostalgic, feel emotional without knowing why. Not coincidence. Energetic imbalance. The shadow effect. Why you haunt their thoughts. You represented something they hadn't integrated yet. Growth, truth, emotional depth. When someone avoids parts of themselves, they're drawn to people who reflect those parts. You became a mirror, and mirrors stay in the mind, long after the person leaves. They can't forget you, because forgetting you would mean ignoring a truth about themselves, and the unconscious doesn't allow that easily. Why new connections don't feel the same. They may meet new people, smile, laugh, but something feels missing. Because new connections interact with who they are. You interacted with who they were becoming. That's a different level of bond. And those bonds don't repeat often. That's why you linger. Not as longing, but as comparison. Why they feel you in emotional moments. They feel you when they're overwhelmed. They're breaking old patterns. They're questioning their life. Because you were present during a turning point. The nervous system remembers support during transition, and when they enter another transition, your energy surfaces. You became emotionally associated with safety, clarity, or truth. And that imprint remains. The silent regret they don't speak about. Sometimes they realize too late. Not dramatically, not with words, but quietly. They see now what they didn't value then. Your patience, your presence, your emotional depth. And that realization hurts more than any argument, because regret arrives after awareness, and awareness doesn't leave. Why they don't admit any of this? Because admitting it would mean facing emotional responsibility, acknowledging loss, accepting change. And not everyone is ready for that, so they stay silent. But silence doesn't mean absence. It means containment. What this means for you. If someone can't forget you, it's because you left a psychological and emotional imprint, not by force, not by chasing, but by being real. And real connections don't fade, they integrate. Do they come back, or do they just remember you? This is the question people ask the most. If they can't forget you, does that mean they'll return? Not always, and this is where maturity begins. Some connections are meant to wake you up, not walk with you forever. They don't come back because they miss you. They come back when they're ready to meet you at the level you already reached. And readiness is rare. Sometimes the memory of you is enough to change them. And that was the purpose. Why some people stay as a presence, not a partner. There are connections that serve as internal guides. You become the voice of honesty, the reminder of emotional depth, the standard they didn't know they needed. They carry you forward internally, not as longing, but as awareness. That's why they may never speak your name again, yet still measure themselves against what they felt with you. When they do return, how it happens. If they come back, it's rarely casual. It comes after internal collapse, emotional growth, or loss of distractions. They don't return to repeat the past. They return because the old version of them can no longer exist. But this only happens when growth is real, not when fear is loud. The difference between panic and growth. Panic wants to possess. Growth wants to connect. Panic shows up suddenly, emotionally, intensely. Growth shows up calmly, consistently, honestly. If they return, do they respect your boundaries? Do they listen more than they speak? Do they accept responsibility without defending? Those answers tell you everything. Why you no longer chase, and why that matters. You stopped trying to be remembered. That's the moment you became unforgettable, because you reclaimed your energy. And when energy is no longer leaking, others feel its absence. You didn't pull away to punish them. You pulled away to protect yourself. And that changed the dynamic completely. The shift, when you outgrow the connection, there comes a moment when you realize something quietly. You don't need them to remember you anymore, because you remember yourself now. And that's the real awakening. At that point, their thoughts about you lose control. Their memory no longer defines you. Their silence no longer hurts. You have integrated the lesson, and that's when peace arrives. Why this connection changed you forever. You learned emotional boundaries, self-worth, depth over attention, presence over attachment. That's not loss. That's evolution. And evolution doesn't regret its past. It honors it, then moves forward. The final truth about why they can't forget you. They can't forget you because you were real in a world of masks. You were deep in a world of surface. You were honest in a world of avoidance. And that leaves a mark, not on memory, on identity. Closure doesn't always come from them. Sometimes closure doesn't arrive as a message. It arrives as understanding. You stop waiting for them to explain. You stop needing them to choose you. You stop hoping they will see what they lost. Not because it didn't matter, but because you matter more now. And that is real closure. When you finally release the need to be remembered. The paradox is this: the moment you stop needing to be unforgettable is the moment you truly are. Because your worth is no longer tied to their memory. You become complete within yourself. And completeness is powerful. The universe never connects people by accident. Every connection serves a purpose. Some come to stay. Some come to teach. Some come to awaken you. If they can't forget you, it means the lesson is still alive within them. But that lesson was never meant to trap you. It was meant to free you. You were never meant to be a memory. You were meant to be a standard, a reminder of emotional depth, real connection, conscious love, inner truth. Whether they rise to that standard or not, is no longer your responsibility. This is the final shift. You no longer ask, "Why can't they forget me?" You now understand, "Because I was real." And that is enough. You don't chase. You don't prove. You don't explain. You simply continue becoming. Final message for you. If someone carries you in their heart long after you're gone, it's because you touched something timeless within them. But your journey doesn't pause for their realization. Your growth is the destination. Have you ever felt someone thinking about you even in silence? Do you believe some connections live beyond time and distance? Or have you been the one who couldn't forget someone who changed you?